people who want to know what is the Keith Andrew Network, the whole point of my talk show is to show you that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities, and never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be, so prove them, still amount to something.
Hi, I'm Laura Spaeth. I was interviewed by Keith Andrew, and I think he's lovely. I think he's a bright light and doing an amazing job.
My name is Keith Andrew, and as you heard from the recommendation, we have a great guest today, only on the Keith Andrew Network. Now, I have the top 15 questions that I'm going to ask you. We're going to talk about acting and writing and a little bit about your stand-up, but we're going to mostly focus on your acting and writing. So the first question I want to ask you is, what attracted you to begin your career as an actress and a writer?
What attracted me to acting, I guess when I was little, I was always in my imagination. I grew up in a time where there weren't computers. I'm giving my age away a little bit, where, I was encouraged to use my imagination. I had puppets. I had, my father was an artist. My mother had records in the house, operas, musicals, books of poetry. So as a kid, I was encouraged to use my imagination. We played outside, and I also was a ballet dancer at a very early age. And that was my first exposure to performing. And I loved that. And I loved the acting aspect of dance as well as dance. So that's how.
Absolutely. I do apologize for my dog. Our dog barking in the background.
That's okay. I love dogs. And the writing I got into later. When I was a kid, I used to, unbeknownst to myself, I used to write little skits and record them. And then later on, I took my first, I started to write, but just for myself, and then later on I took stand-up comedy. And then from stand-up comedy, I started writing plays and then screenplays.
No, that's wonderful. And second question is, what is the biggest change you want to make in your acting career and writing career?
What is the biggest change? Well, I want to make more money. No, but creatively, I guess the biggest change, I guess acting wise, it would be to do projects that, I don't know. That's a good question. What's the biggest change? I don't know that I would change anything. I just think I would like more shots at the plate. How about that? And in terms of my writing, I'm working on something right now. I would like to be able to access my creativity in a way that was a bit more, what's the word? A bit, I don't want to say confident. I would like to be able to finish the act 2 of my screenplay, which is the hardest act, the meat and potatoes. Sometimes I get caught between what I think I should write and what may be the best thing. I guess my answer is, I think I should allow myself to fail a little more and not be afraid of that. Because sometimes within the failure, you go, okay, let's just write this, even if it's garbage. And then I will figure out what I'm really trying to say. Does that make sense?
No, I can relate to this, especially, and I know as I'm looking at my reflection, I'm trying to hide my fat neck. I'm trying to go on a diet, but to lose in battle.
Oh my God. We're all trying to hide our fat necks.
Yeah, but you look great, though.
Thank you. Thank you.
But no, I agree with you that there's a lot of things, especially, trying to think without hurting myself. What you just said, sometimes you just have to go with it. Yeah. I did 1,000 interviews. Thanks to you. I didn't even say the number before the show. It's probably like 13 or something right now. I feed off positive energy. That's my biggest thing. When
Mm-hmm.
I go to meet someone, if you're upbeat, you're full of energy, you're lovely, you're bubbly, and you feel a connection. Like this person actually gives a shit, but I
Yeah.
actually that, but I actually cared. Say, hey,
Mhm.
can we take a picture? Can we get an autograph? Instead of feeling like it's a normal transaction of here you go, here's my money, sign
Yeah.
it, and okay, I hope I never see you again. I feed
Yeah.
off positive energy. So there's certain people I always go back to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so like from a big wrestling fan, there's like, Velvet Sky or Milena Perez. I feed off positive energy. There's certain wrestlers that I meet, and if I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel the positive energy, or if I don't feel a connection, they're kind of like, okay, well, I'm glad I met this person and they were a one-time thing. And the same
Mm-hmm.
thing about my interviews. If there's someone who I really enjoy having on the show, but I will
Mm-hmm.
have them on the show. But
Mm-hmm.
if someone's got to sit like this, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like, why am I even bothered? And then the same thing about writing
Yeah.
too. You have to write about what gets you fired up. You have to write about what gets you fired up, what makes you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Why should people care? Why should people read it? And that's the same thing about my show. Why should they watch it? Why should they care? Because if you're not being funny, if you're not being entertaining, and you're just,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm guilty of this, if you're just going through emotions, you're really
Mm-hmm.
setting yourself up for failure, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, totally does. I guess what I was trying to say more is that I think sometimes perfection is a detriment, because I think sometimes you just have to do it and not really care if it's perfect or sloppy or messy. I think especially with art and comedy and writing and stuff like that, you have to be willing to fail, because that's the only way you grow, I think.
Yeah,
So that's a good question.
my brother likes not actually hitting me over the head, but verbally hitting me over the head. Says, I've been doing this for 10 years, and if it hasn't gone anywhere, it's never going to be. But
Uh-huh.
the truth is, and I do take that personally, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I would rather have it take another 10 years and have a solid foundation than be an
Mhm.
overnight sensation or have my 15
Mhm.
minutes of fame and then that's it. You had your 15 minutes of fame, move on, it's someone else's turn. Just the
Yeah.
fact it's growing and taking on, it's kind of like a bowel movement.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
fact
you're
that,
doing what you like, right?
yeah,
You're doing
absolutely.
what you like, you know?
The biggest thing is and that's the next question I want to ask you. You're an
Mhm.
actress, you're a writer. You need to make a solid foundation. And it doesn't matter if it takes 5, 10, 15 years, because with your writing, do you want to be an overnight sensation or do you want to build something that will even longer?
Well, I don't think anyone is an overnight sensation. I think that's an American myth. I don't believe in an overnight success. Since I don't believe in that. So if you see people and they get successful overnight, they've been doing it for a long time. Something just happened to graze somebody's eye or desk or whatever, and that overnight sensation. I think it's American. We like to propagate that as America. Ooh, it's the girl that was just discovered. Nobody's just discovered. I think that's a myth.
And there's no such thing as perfect. The whole thing of like people like to jam down your throat, practice makes perfect. Like the
Yeah.
comedian said, and he should use this one. And if I find a clip, I'll send it to you. Eliminate that because practice does not make perfect. It makes improvements. Because
Yes.
no one's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the
Agreed.
question, yeah, absolutely. The next question I want to ask you is about disabilities. Besides me, obviously, have you
Uh-huh.
worked with people with disabilities? And for people who want to take acting classes and writing classes and want to follow in your footsteps,
Mm-hmm.
how can they go about it?
I have not worked with any writers or actors with disabilities. per se that I know of. However, I have worked with comedians, not one-on-one, but I have been on shows with comedians with disabilities, and they have been some of the funniest people I've worked with. I worked with a guy who had cerebral palsy. I worked with a woman who had brain damage injury. Very funny. I lived with a woman for a time who was legally blind, so I know what that's like. And through her eyes, I know some of the prejudices now that legally blind people have, like because you don't look blind and not wearing black glasses, people think, oh, you're fine, or they assume things. And there was just a lot of things that I never knew as a sighted person, and that I now have more of an appreciation. But I encourage anybody who's got any kind of disability to write, to be funny. I mean, there's so many funny stand-up comedians that have disabilities, anything from cerebral palsy to blind to little people. I don't necessarily know that that's a, disability. It's not a disability, but it's definitely different. And there are definitely challenges that come with it. So I've been on stage with several people that have had challenges. Yeah.
Well, that brings up my next point. Let's see, well, how am I going to phrase this one? Because this is a two-part question. Have you ever received any advice? This is going to sound like an oxymoron, but I'm going to say it anyway. What was some of the best advice you have received, and what would be some of the best advice you would give to someone?
The best advice I ever received, I guess it would be to be yourself. That sounds kind of Pollyanna, but in terms of like acting and writing, like in terms of acting, you can't guess what people want. You just have to be the best version of whatever it is yourself. And that doesn't mean don't read the script, don't research the character, don't know what the story is. I think the more authentic you can be in terms of your writing, your comedy, your acting, or anything you're trying to do, if it's a podcast, the more authentic you can be in who you are, I think that's going to make you, quote unquote, inevitably stand out. And the best advice I can give is to follow your dream, and also to, we only have one life that we live, that we know of, right? So I think people are more capable than they think they are. I think people are capable of healing themselves, of illness. I'm a big believer in the mind-body connection. And I've seen people with quote unquote disabilities accomplish amazing things. So I don't think, give yourself no limitations. There's always more that you could do.
No, I agree. And one thing I have to deal with, and I deal with it on an everyday basis, you are your own worst enemy and your own worst critic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say to silence that inner critic, to just keep going, because there's always going to be something. There's always going to be an excuse not to do something, right? And sometimes where I get caught up in is I think 20 steps ahead, but sometimes when you do that, you overwhelm yourself. Like if you really knew how hard something was going to be, you probably never would do it, right? So sometimes you just have to go, okay, I'm going to just be at point 1. And then when I get to point 2, I'll deal with point 2. So staying in the moment too, I think, is a good thing.
Absolutely. Now, the next question I want to ask you is, what was your biggest failure, and did you have a learning experience? Did it change you?
My biggest failure. Oh God. I don't know that I've had a biggest failure. Did I have a biggest failure? You mean in terms of my career or in terms of life?
Well, of everything.
Well, I mean, I'm divorced, so you could say I failed at marriage, but
but marriage is a two-partner thing. It's not a one-sided thing.
Yeah, but I guess what I thought was my biggest challenge turned into my greatest strength. Like I've had several autoimmune issues that I've dealt with, and out of that, I had to sort of learn another way. So sometimes I think out of our greatest challenges can come. I learned a lot about the body and the mind and food and healing and meditation. So out of a challenge came, I had to learn other ways. So I guess, I don't know if I'd answered your question, but definitely, yeah.
No,
I don't know
absolutely.
that I've had a failure in terms of my career, because I don't really think not getting a part is a failure. It's just,
Well, let's go to the opposite one of that question. What has been your greatest achievements?
my greatest achievement. Well, I'll give you an example of one of them recently. I've been advocating for a man who's been wrongfully accused in prison. He's in a life sentence, and I wrote an article about him. And after months of advocating for him, he is now in the hands of the Innocence Project, and he's got. I was able to garner him representation, not just me, not just myself, myself, the help of a friend of mine, and also I was able to raise awareness where a big pro bono, law firm is possibly going to get him out of a life sentence. So that's been my biggest accomplishment in terms of like for another person's social justice. So that I'm very proud of that I advocate for somebody I don't know, and that he might have a chance at freedom.
No, absolutely. Well, let me ask you about this one. You mentioned that you're an upcoming professional actress and you're a writer. Social media, can social media make you or break you with everything going on, especially now with TikTok, and hopefully they do ban it, because personally, I just think TikTok is just freaking terrible. But do you think Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, has these platforms given you an opportunity to reach out to a broader audience and has helped you with your career?
For me personally, no, because I don't use social media like other people use it. I know that it's very important to a lot of people. I'm not of that TikTok generation. I think it's great for people who use it, and I know there are a lot of authors that use it. It has not helped me, but I haven't fully utilized it. But that being said, I'm in the process of developing a podcast that I can't really talk about, where that will be utilized by the people developing the show. I'm one of the creative content creators of the show. I'm not involved in that aspect, but we do have people working on the marketing aspect for TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all that thing. So I do think it is important, but I also think that there's a lot of people on some of these platforms that just basically have no talent, but a lot of followers.
It's true.
And I think it can lead to depression, especially in young women. I'm not a young woman, obviously, but I think that a lot of young women, it's detrimental because they see these girls like on yachts and bikinis and stuff like that, and they're just influencers, and they're making, $100,000 a year. And then maybe a girl who's a little more plain and not like that is like, oh my God, I'm a loser. I'm not on TikTok in a cute outfit in a bikini, and you know what I mean? I think it can be really hard. I'm glad I did not grow up in that, because I can't imagine what it would be like to not have all the cool followers and maybe be a little bit of a nerd. You know what I mean? I didn't grow up in that. So
for me, you have to use social media if you're just gonna, and it's uncensored. If you're just gonna use it to screw around, it's gonna read the problems. But if you're gonna use it like a professional platform, get a job, get yourself out there, it can be really useful. And you can say that about anything. You can say that about the retail market. People hate retail, but you don't have to hate it if you get something out of it and if you move up. But
Yeah.
there's so many different scenarios we can use, people misusing it. But I go back to what you're saying about stupid videos. There's backyard wrestling. There's one that really antagonizes me. It's about disabled people when
Hmm.
they, there's like certain people that use that to their advantage, and I'm guilty. I use my disability to my advantage. However, let me clarify. That does not excuse you for an example, if you go for an autograph signing, you ask
Hmm.
permission, hey, can I put my arm around you and we take a picture? You just don't go and do that. You ask for
Correct.
permission. Or if you're at a
Mhm.
wrestling show, and God forbid there's a smart wrestling fan,
Yeah.
me. No, I am
Yeah.
a smart wrestling fan, but God forbid there's a smart fan in the audience. You just don't grab the person because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I paid for my ticket. Oh, it's okay for me to put my hands on you. Because that ruins things for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You, but,
Hmm.
you can't fix stupid. You can numb it with a 2x4. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like the same thing with social media. You're like, oh, you can have these great, phenomenal, any product you want, but it takes one person to put a video on it, and then
Yeah.
I don't know, it just spreads, and it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, and social media has helped me. I remember I did a commercial years ago and somebody contacted me on Facebook. They're like, "Are you this person? Because we want to renew this." And they couldn't find my agent at the time. I booked a comedy. I've met comedy bookers that are like, "Hey, I think you're funny. Can you?" So it has helped me in that sense. But to say that I've fully used it to its full advantage, no, I have
Well,
not.
let me ask you this,
Uh-huh.
because you are in the entertainment world. When you were on job interviews, do they ask you, do you have social media? Do you use it?
I mean, acting. No, they don't ask.
Because
I'm a SAG actor. So when I audition for projects, it comes through something called the breakdowns, which my manager says, here's this audition for, I don't know, say it's, I don't know, East New York or a show like that, some show. It will give you the breakdown, it will give you the sides, which is the script that you're auditioning for. And you have to say, hi, my name is Laura Spaeth. I'm 5'5". I live in New York City, and that's it. And then you do your scene. They don't say how many social media. I think that's more if it's like a, a more of an independent or a student thing where they're trying to get clicks and hits. But if it's a well-established show,
right.
they don't ask you. Like I've auditioned for network TV. They don't go, how many Instagram followers you have. They're blue bloods. They don't care. You know what I'm saying? So no.
No, you're absolutely right. For
Yeah.
me, I used to work in retail, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, this one job, I'm never going to work for them, so it doesn't make a difference to me. And yes, I talk with my hands. I
Mm-hmm.
worked for Saks Fifth. Horrible job. And, there's a long story about that. And they asked me, do you have social media? And I lied and I said, no. Because
Uh-huh.
at the time I was doing my talk show. If I
Uh-huh.
have to choose what I want to do for the rest of my life, or put a fake face on and be miserable for a 9 to 5 job, I would rather do this. And it's kind of like, and so now I tell people the truth. Yeah, I'm a talk show host with a learning disability. What are you
Mm-hmm.
gonna do about it? Not hire me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, so then it goes back to the point we were saying about stupid videos. If
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about, hey, you light garbage cans on fire, or you do like skateboard tricks,
Mm-hmm.
yes, then that person should not be hired. But if someone's making themselves into an example, saying, I have a learning disability and I have a professional talk show,
Yeah.
and they don't hire them, number one, they're discriminating against people with disabilities. And
Yeah.
number two, having someone who's disabled who's also being a positive light and a
Mm-hmm.
positive influence kind of makes it stand out like, hey, that's really cool that you hired this person
Yeah.
because he's going out and making a difference for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have jackass over here who's doing
Yeah.
bizarre videos,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, anyway, that's
Yeah, I
another
think you have to be careful when you have, like, I know my sister's a teacher and she does not have like a Facebook profile
right.
or anything. She doesn't want students knowing her private life, and nor should she. You know what I'm saying? You can get into dangerous trouble. Like, I can kind of say anything I want because I'm a writer, I'm an artist. It's like, well, I don't have children. You know what I mean? I don't have to be quote unquote responsible, even though I try to be responsible. But I think at a job, when companies start to get in your business,
Yeah.
it gets tricky, and sometimes you find out what people really are. Some people are really, racist or sexist, or you know what I mean, or crazy, weird, it can be a great insight into who you are, right? So anyway.
No, absolutely. It can easily backfire in your face if you misuse
Yeah.
it. It's like with anything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do have a couple questions for you off the air.
Sure.
But the last one I want to ask you, I want
Mhm.
you to be brutally honest. I have no cards up my sleeve.
Okay.
When I first approached you to be a guest in my talk show,
Mhm.
what made you say yes? How do you feel now? And would you recommend it to other people? Being completely honest, you can say anything you want.
What made me say yes was probably, you were just, hi, I'm Keith. This is what I do. You just sounded normal and nice. Sometimes, I'll be perfectly honest. Sometimes men approach me on Facebook and they say weird or creepy things, or they're like, hey, beautiful, or something silly like that. And it's like, this is some guy just cruising. And you're like, hi, I'm Keith. I have a talk show. I have a disability. I'm trying to be a, bright light. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I got the impression that you were trying to be a bright light and you were very professional. And I was like, yeah, why not? I'm in between writing stuff. I'll do an interview. That's not a problem, and you caught me also on a slowish week, so where I had time. So that's why. And what I recommend you, yes, absolutely. I think anybody pursuing their passion, and trying to be a bright light for the world is a good thing.
And I agree with you 100%. Now, I do have a couple questions for you off the air, but the
Mhm.
last one I want to ask you is, where are you heading to next? Do you have any projects you want to promote? And how can the fans and the listeners get in touch with you?
Okay, so you can find me on IMDb, Laura Spaeth, LauraSpaeth, at Instagram, Laura_Spaeth, and also on Facebook if you want to friend me. Any upcoming Pride? Well, I work for a company called Starline Films, and we have a couple of projects in development, but I don't really have anything I can talk about publicly yet. But you can follow me on IMDb, and you can follow me on Instagram for any upcoming shows. I host a show. I'll be hosting a show Friday, March 19th at the Broadway Comedy Club, the 8 o'clock show. I'll be the host there. So yeah, that's how you can find me there. Sunday, March 19th. That's the thing that I have coming up.
No, absolutely. But
Yeah.
wrapping up, it was a real honor privilege having you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part two. But before we get to part two,
Sure.
our goal for every single episode where we do on the Keith Network is to reach 100 and more. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. But wrapping up, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. And until we meet again,
Thanks,
catch you
Keith.
later.
Nice
Thank
meeting
you.
you.
And have a good night.